Today, we're looking at a blue ink by Waterman Mysterious Blue. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. There's timestamps down below so that if you want to skip around, you can, but if you got the time, check out the entire video. You can follow me over on Instagram, and don't forget to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Sailor, my first pen, with a medium fine nib. I wrote with it for a day and then used it to take the notes for this video. In order to have a standardization in my writing samples, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper, although I do use more papers and those will show up later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it comes in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer some shading in the point that we can find some darker and some much lighter areas. The word blue is much lighter. The camera's having a bit of trouble with it. The T in mysterious looks much darker than all the letters around it, so it is there. The extra fine is quite a bit darker than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and there is some shading. You look at the word over and it goes from lighter to darker quick. The top of the Q is lighter than the bottom of the Q by quite a bit. Fox goes from lighter to darker, 8 seconds to dry. Medium is even darker than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does have some nicer looking shading. In quick it starts dark, gets light in the Q, but then it gets very dark in the whole word except the top part of the K. It's nice. Fox starts light and gets dark, so there is some decent shading here and 12 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine doesn't show a whole lot of color variation, although there is some. The medium shows more color variation, and there is more in the medium. Tomoe River. No bleeding, no ghosting. Very minor for Tomoe River ghosting. It's a very palish ink. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 12 seconds to dry. Medium is even darker than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 17 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show no color variation, and we didn't get any. And then there's Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. Now the extra fine is darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. It has shading spots. When I look at Fox, it starts as a mid-tone. It gets darker on the bottom of the F, back into the mid-tone, dark on the X. So there's spots of it there. The word dry starts dark and works its way lighter. Over starts lighter and works its way darker. It's just not jumping and standing out, but it is there. 9 seconds to dry. Now medium is a tad bit darker than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The 13 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both do show some color variation, although it is not really coming through with the medium. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see a very light blue pushing its way up, and the green is really able to travel much farther. There's a white separation where the green's moved beyond the blue's stopping point. We get a very bright green, and then what we get is that kind of highlighter blue all the way at the top. So this is a very interesting mix. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And the standout thing that is really there is that blue line across the bottom. It really makes you wonder if that blue is going to be a holdout color. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I would not use this in a note-taking situation.
because I'm afraid of losing important things. Not if I want to be able to go back and highlight. Now, water is reactivating and lifting it. If you look at the bottom edge, you start to see the white of the paper coming through on the water dot. However, if for some reason that wasn't enough, although I believe it will be, Pen Flush is doing a bit more than the water did. So the Pen Flush would be without a doubt where you got to stop. Now the 1/3 bleach solution, there is absolutely no need for it, but it does obliterate it and take it completely off the page.
I test ink viscosity or flow by using a tilt test, and I've linked that video and put that in here for you. Now for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9.
Waterman Mysterious Blue has a viscosity of 1.73, making this a wetter ink.
To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average all of those. Now, for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds.
Waterman Mysterious Blue has an average dry time of 12 seconds, making this a faster drying ink. Instead of finding inks that look like Waterman's Mysterious Blue, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I wanted to go with a nice brown, and I chose Diamine's Rustic Brown.
The second writing sample is done on yellow Rhodia, black and red, and Franklin Christoph paper.
Here we're looking at the yellow Rhodia paper to see what kind of tone change we could really get for having a different background. Now, quite a bit. This ink does tend to lean much more turquoise than blue. Now this is kind of a blue on white, but on the yellow, without a doubt, green. It is completely changing its color, which means in a professional environment, you may need to be aware of that if you use yellow paper. Black and red notebook. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is a little bit darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 2 seconds to dry. Medium is quite a bit darker than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, shade, or shade, 4 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show no color variation, and we didn't get any. Last up, Franklin Christoph. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is a little bit darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 2 seconds to dry. Medium is quite a bit darker than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 5 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we didn't get any, and that is all that I have for the writing sample.
So what do I think of Waterman's Mysterious Blue? You can't talk about this ink without having to point out that it's much more turquoise than blue. Mysterious indeed. Now it doesn't offer a lot of shading. It is a very well-behaved ink though. It's very safe to use in a lot of different pens, which is something that any Waterman ink has going for it. So what nib and pen is going to give the best writing experience with this ink? I didn't care for it in any of the dry or medium flow pens that I tried. I had to go to a very wet pen, and a very wet medium or very wet fine will put enough ink down to make this easy to read, not a problem, and the color to look nice. Just don't tell people it's Mysterious Blue. Or do, because it'll confuse them. If you've made it this far and you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I'm going to remind you to subscribe. Thanks for watching.